Hi guys, so in today's lecture we'll be looking at chapter 5 of political science, legislature. Okay, so we have already studied the importance of elections, executives and all. So legislatures, they are elected by the people and work on behalf of the people. So in this chapter we will study how elected legislatures function and help in maintaining democratic government. You will also learn about the composition and functioning of the parliament and state legislatures in India and their importance in democratic government. So after reading this chapter, you would know the importance of legislature, the functions and powers of the Parliament of India, the lawmaking procedure, how the Parliament controls executive and how the Parliament regulates itself. Okay, so why do we need a parliament? Legislature is not merely a lawmaking body. Lawmaking is about one of the functions of the legislature. It is one of the functions of the legislature. It is a center of all democratic political process. It is packed with action, walkouts, protest, demonstration, unanimity, concern, and cooperation. All these serve all very vital purposes. Indeed, a genuine democracy is inconceivable without a representative, efficient, and effective legislature. The legislature also helps people in holding the representatives accountable. This is indeed the very basis of representative democracy, which is accountability. Okay. Yet in most democracies, the legislatures are losing central place to the executive. In India, too, the cabinet initiates policies, sets the agenda for governance, and carries them through. This has led some critics to remark the parliament has declined. But even very strong cabinets must retain majority in the legislature. A strong leader has to face the parliament and answer to the satisfaction of the parliament. Herein lies the democratic potential of the parliament. It is recognized as one of the most democratic and open form of debate. On account of its composition, it is the most representative of all the organs of the government. It is above all vested with the power to choose and dismiss the government. Okay, why do we need two houses of parliament? Okay, the term parliament refers to the national legislature. Legislature of the states is described as state legislature. The parliament in India has two houses. There are When there are two houses of the legislature, it is called a bicameral legislature. The two houses of the Indian parliament are the Council of States of the Rajya Sabha and the House of the People or the Lok Sabha. The constitution has given the states the option of establishing either a unicameral or bicameral legislature. At present, only 6 states have bicameral legislature. Okay, so these states with bicameral legislature are Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh. Okay, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh. Countries with large size and much diversity usually prefer to have two houses of the national legislature to give representation to all sections of the society and give representation to all geographical regions in the parts of the country. A bicameral legislature has one more advantage. A bicameral legislature makes it possible to have every decision reconsidered. Every decision taken by one house goes to the other for its decision. This means that every bill and policy would be discussed twice. This ensures a double check on every matter. Even if one house takes a decision in haste, this decision will come in the discussion of the other house and reconsideration will be possible. Okay, now we come to Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha. Each of the two houses of the parliament has different bases of representation. The Rajya Sabha represents the states of India. It is indirectly elected. Residents of the state elect members to the state legislative assembly. The elected members of state legislative assembly in turn elect the members of the Rajya Sabha. We can imagine two different principles of representation in the second chamber. One way is to give equal representation to all the parts of the country irrespective of their size and population. We may call this as symmetric representation. On the other hand, parts of the country may be given representation according to their population. This second method means that regions or parts having larger population would have more representatives in the second chamber than regions with less population. In the USA, every state has equal representation in the Senate. This ensures equality of all the states, but this also means that a small state would have the same representation as the larger states. System of representation adopted by for the Rajya Sabha is different from that in the US. The number of members to be elected from each state has to be fixed by the fourth schedule. Those to be elected from each state has been fixed by the fourth schedule. So fourth schedule, how to remember it? It is this four is similar to a chair. Okay, so remember that it reminds us of a seat. So fourth schedule is related to the number of seats of the elected representatives. Okay, what would happen if we were to follow the American system of equality of representation of Rajya Sabha? So it means in the equal representation from equal states. Currently, we are following based on population. Okay. Apart from elected members, Rajya Sabha also has 12 nominated members. The president nominates these members. These nominations are made from among the persons who have made their mark in the fields of literature, science, art, and social service. This is very important for four fields. Literature is a science, art, and social service. Okay. Now Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies are directly elected by the people. For the purpose of election, the entire country is divided into territorial constituencies of roughly equal population. One representative is elected from each constituency through universal adult suffrage, where the value of vote of every individual would be equal to another. At present, there are 543 constituencies. This number has not changed since 1971 census. Lok Sabha is elected for a period of 5 years. This is the maximum. We have seen in the chapter on the executive that before the completion of 5 years, the Lok Sabha can be dissolved if no party or coalition can form the government. Okay. If the Prime Minister advises the President to dissolve the Lok Sabha and hold elections, okay, that is another point. So what does the Parliament do? Okay, what is the function of the legislature? Do both houses of the Parliament have similar function? Is there a difference in the powers of the two houses? Apart from lawmaking, the Parliament is engaged in many other functions. Let us list the functions of the Parliament. Okay, first one is legislative function. The Parliament enacts legislation for the country. Despite being chief lawmaking body, the Parliament have often merely approves legislation. The actual task of drafting the bill is performed by the bureaucracy under the supervision of the minister concerned. The substance and even the timing of the bill is decided by the cabinet. No major bill is introduced in the Parliament without the approval of the cabinet. Members other than the ministers can also introduce bills, but these have no chance of being passed without the support of the government. Control of executive and ensuring its accountability. Perhaps the most vital function of Parliament is to ensure that the executive does not overstep its authority and remains responsible to the people who have elected them. We shall discuss this function in greater detail later in this chapter. So, financial function. Government is about spending a lot of money in various matters. Where does the money come from? Okay, every government raises resources from through taxation. However, in democracy, legislature controls taxation and the way in which money is used by the government. If the government of India proposes to introduce any new tax, it has to get the approval of the Lok Sabha. The financial powers of the Parliament involve grant of resources to the government to implement its programs. The government has to give an account to the legislature about the money it has spent and resources it wishes to raise. The legislature also ensures that the government does not misspend or overspend. This is done through budget and annual financial statements. Okay, now so the next is representation. Parliament's pen represents the divergent views of members from different regional, social, economic, religious groups of different parts of the country. Debating function. Okay, the Parliament is the highest forum of debate in the country. There is no limitation to its power of discussion. Members are free to speak any matter without fear. This makes it possible for the Parliament to analyze any or every issue that faces the nation. These discussions constitute the heart of the democratic decision making. Okay, now constituent function. The Parliament has a power of discussing and enacting changes to the Constitution. The constituent powers of both the houses are similar. All the constitutional amendments have to be approved by a special majority of both houses. Electoral functions. The Parliament also performs some electoral functions. It elects the President and the Vice President of India. Judicial function. The judicial functions of the Parliament include considering the proposal for removal of President, Vice President, and judges of High Court and Supreme Court. The powers of Rajya Sabha. We discussed about the functions that are performed by the Parliament in general. However, in bicameral legislature, there is some difference between the powers of the two houses. Now, we will look in the chart below. Okay, powers. First, we will discuss the powers of Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha makes laws on matters included in the Union list and concurrent list, can introduce and enact money and non-money bills. In powers of Rajya Sabha, it considers and approves non-money bills and suggests amendments to money bills. Lok Sabha approves proposal for taxation, budgets, and annual financial statements. Rajya Sabha approves constitutional amendments. Lok Sabha controls the executive by asking questions, supplementary questions, resolutions, and motions, and through non-confidence motion. Rajya Sabha exercises control over executive by asking questions, introducing motions, and resolution. Okay, Lok Sabha amends the constitution. Rajya Sabha participates in the election, removal of the president, vice president, judges of Supreme Court and High Court. It can also initiate the procedure for removal of vice president. Lok Sabha approves a proclamation of emergency, elects the president and vice president, and removes the judges of Supreme Court and High Court, establishes committees and commissions, and considers their report. Okay. Now, special powers of the Rajya Sabha. As you know, Rajya Sabha is an institutional mechanism to provide representation to the states. Its purpose is to protect the powers of the state. Therefore, any matter which affects the states must be referred to it for its consent and approval. Thus, if the Union Parliament wishes to remove a matter from the state list to either the Union list or the concurrent list in the interest of the nation, the approval of Rajya Sabha is necessary. This provision adds to the strength of the Rajya Sabha. However, experience shows that the members of the Rajya Sabha represent their parties more than they represent their states. Okay, powers exercised only by the Lok Sabha. Then there are powers that only Lok Sabha exercises. The Rajya Sabha cannot initiate, reject, or amend money bills. The Council of Ministers is responsible to the Lok Sabha and not Rajya Sabha. Therefore, Rajya Sabha can criticize the government but cannot remove it. Okay, now can you explain it why Rajya Sabha is elected by the MLAs and not directly by people? Therefore, the constitution stopped short of giving certain powers to the Rajya Sabha. In a democratic form, as adopted by our constitution, the people are the final authority. By this logic, the representatives directly elected by the people should have the crucial powers of removing government and controlling the finances. In other spheres, including passing of non-money bills, constitutional amendments, and impeaching the president and removing vice president, the powers of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are co-equal. How does Parliament make laws? The basic function of any legislature is to make the laws for its people. A definite procedure is followed in the process of making laws. Some of the procedures of lawmaking are mentioned in the Constitution, while some have evolved from conventions. Okay, follow a bill through the legislative process and we will clearly see how the lawmaking process is technical and even tedious. Okay, first is people's input. Committee gives a report, and now we will see before that. Okay, the first we have bill. Bill is introduced in either house in case of non-money bill. Okay, then it is sent to the committee for the discussion in the house itself, and also next is people gives input and committee gives a report, and the house may not accept the report, may not or may accept the report. Then after that, the detailed discussion of bill in the house is done. The bill is accepted or rejected. If it is accepted in the Lok Sabha, it is sent to the Rajya Sabha. The other house also approves or gives a recommendation, and joint session of the parliament, if there is an efficient joint session is held, president approves and send back or send back for reconsideration. If president approves it, the bill becomes law. Okay, a bill is a draft of the proposed law. There can be different types of bills. When a non-minister proposes a bill, is called private member's bill. a bill proposed by minister is described as government bill. Okay, now let us see the different stages in the life of a bill. Types of bill: government bill when it is introduced by minister, private bill when a non-minister is introduced in a bill. Okay, there is also money bill and non-money bill. So in non-money bill we have uh, in the non-money bill we have ordinary bill and constitutional amendment bill. Even before a bill is introduced in the parliament, there may be a lot of debate on the need for introducing such a bill. Okay, a political party may pressurize the government to initiate a bill in order to fulfill its elections promises or to improve its chances of winning forthcoming elections. Interest groups, media, citizens forums may also pursue the government for a particular legislation. Lawmaking is not merely a legal procedure but also a political course of action. Preparation of a bill itself involves many considerations such as resources required to implement the law, the support or opposition that the bill is likely to produce, and the impact that the law may have on the electoral prospect of the ruling party. In the era of coalition politics especially, a bill proposed by the government has to be acceptable to all the partners of the coalition. Such practical consideration can hardly be ignored. Okay, how does the parliament control the executive? In a parliamentary democracy, the executive is drawn from the party or a coalition of parties that has a majority in the Lok Sabha. It is not difficult for the executive to exercise unlimited and arbitrary powers with the support of the majority party. In such a situation, parliamentary democracy may slip into cabinet dictatorship, where the cabinet leads and the house merely follows. Only if the parliament is active and vigilant can it keep regular and effective check on the executive. There are many ways in which parliament can control the executive. What are they? But basic of them all is the power and freedom of the legislatures as people's representative to work effective and fearlessly. For instance, no action can be taken against a member for whatever the member may have said in the legislature. This is known as parliamentary privilege. The presiding officer of the legislature has the final powers in deciding matters of breach of privilege. The main purpose of such privileges is to enable members of the legislature to represent the people and exercise effective control over the executive. Okay. Now, instruments of parliamentary control. Legislature in parliamentary system ensures executive accountability in various stages. Policy making, implementation of law or policy, and during and post implementation stage. The legislature does this through the use of variety of devices: deliberation and discussion, approval and refusal of laws, financial control, no confidence motion. So, what is deliberation and discussion? During the lawmaking process, members of the legislature get an opportunity to deliberate on the policy direction of the executive and ways in which policies are implemented. Apart from deliberating on bills, control may have also exercised during the general discussion in the House. The question hour, which is held every day during the sessions of the Parliament, where ministers have to respond to searching questions raised by the members. 0 hour, where the members are free to raise any matter they like. It is actually an Indian invention. 0 hour is an Indian invention. Okay, half an hour discussion on matters of public importance, adjournment motion, etc. are some instruments of exercising control. Perhaps question hour is the most effective method of keeping vigil on the executive and administrative agencies of the government. Members of the parliament have shown great interest in question hour and maximum attendance in recording during this time. Most of the questions aimed at eliciting information from the government on issues of public interest such as price rise, availability of food grains, atrocities on weaker sections of the society, black marketing, etc. Okay, these are some of the methods involved. Now, approval and ratification of laws. Parliamentary control is exercised through its power of ratification. A bill can become a law only with the approval of the parliament. Government thus has the support of a disciplined majority may not find it difficult to get the approval of the legislature. Such approvals, however, cannot be taken for granted. They are the products of intense bargaining and negotiations among the members of ruling party or coalition of parties and even government and opposition. If the government has majority in Lok Sabha but not in Rajya Sabha, as to have happened during the Janata Party rule in 1977 and NDA rule in 2000, the government will be forced to make substantial concession to gain the approval of both the houses. Many bills such as Lokpal bill have failed. Enactment prevention of terrorism bill was rejected by Rajya Sabha. So next is financial control. As mentioned earlier, financial resources are to implement the programs of the government are granted through budget. Preparation and presentation of budget for the approval of the legislature is a constitutional obligation of the government. This obligation allows the legislature to exercise control over the the purse strings of the government. Okay, the legislature may refuse to grant resources to the government. This seldom happens because the government only enjoys support of the majority in the parliamentary system. Nevertheless, before granting money, Lok Sabha can discuss reasons for which the government requires money. Okay, it can inquire in the cases of misuse of fund on the basis of the report of the CAG and public account committee. But the legislative control is not only aimed at financial property. The legislature is concerned about the policies of the government that is reflected on the budget. Through financial control, the legislature controls the policy of the government. Non-confidence motion, the most powerful weapon that enables the parliament to ensure executive accountability is non-confidence motion. As long as the government has the power of its party or coalition of parties that have a majority in the Lok Sabha, the power of the House to dismiss the government is fictional rather than real. However, 1989, in 1989, several governments have been forced to resign due to lack of confidence in the House. Each of these governments lost the confidence of Lok Sabha because they failed to retain the support of their coalition partners. Thus, the parliament can effectively control the executive and ensure a more responsive government. It is, however, important for this purpose that there is inadequate time for the disposal of the House. The members are interested in discussion and participate effectively. There is willingness to compromise among the government and the opposition. In last 2 decades, there has been gradual decline in sessions of Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies, and time spent on debates. Moreover, the House of the Parliament has been placed by the absence of power. Boycott of sessions by members of opposition, which deprive the House the power to control the executive through discussion. Okay, what do the committees of Parliament do? So, in current case scenario, these committees are a very important topic. Okay, a significant feature of the legislative process is the appointment of committees for various legislative purposes. These committees play a vital role not merely in lawmaking but also in the day-to-day business of the House. Since the Parliament meets only during sessions, it has very limited time at its disposal. The making of the law, for instance, requires in-depth study of the issue under consideration. This in turn demands more attention and time. Similarly, there are other important functions also, like studying the demands for grants made by various ministries, looking into expenditure inquired by various departments, investigating cases of corruption, etc. Parliamentary committees perform such functions. Since 1983, India has developed a system of parliamentary standing committees. There are over 20 such departmentally related committees. Standing committees supervise the work of various departments. Their budget, their expenditure, and bills that come up in the House relating to the department. Apart from standing committees, the joint parliamentary committees have occupied a position of eminence in our country. JPCs can be set up for the purpose of discussing a particular bill, like the joint committee to discuss bills on the purpose of investigating financial irregularities. Members of the committees are selected from both the houses. Committee system has reduced the burden on the parliament. Many important bills have been referred to the committees. Parliament has merely approved the work done in the committees with few occasional alterations. Of course, legally speaking, no bill can become law and no budget can be sanctioned unless approved by the parliament. But the parliament rarely rejects the suggestions made by committees. So, how does the parliament regulate itself? Okay, parliament, as mentioned earlier, is a debating form. It is through debates that the parliament performs all its vital functions. Such discussions must be meaningful and orderly so as the functions of the parliament are carried out smoothly and its dignity is intact. The constitution itself has made certain provisions to ensure smooth conduct of business. The presiding officer of the legislature is the final authority in matters of regulating the business of the legislature. Okay, there is one way. There is one more way in which the presiding officers control the behavior of the members. You have heard of the Anti-Defection Law. Most of the members in the legislature are elected on the ticket of some political party. Okay, they leave the party after they are elected. For many years after independence, this issue was unresolved. Finally, there was an agreement among the parties that a legislature who is elected in one party's ticket must be restricted from defecting to another. The amendment of the Constitution made in the 52nd Amendment Act. 52nd Amendment Act. This is known as Anti-Defection Amendment. 52nd Amendment Act is known as Anti-Defection Amendment. This is known as okay. It was also subsequently modified by 91st Amendment. Presiding officer of the House is the authority who takes final decisions on all such cases, which means the speaker is the one who decides where there is defection involved or not. Okay, and it is not cannot be challenged by the court also. Okay, if it is proved that a member has defected, then such member loses the membership of the House. Besides, such a person is also disqualified from holding any political offices like ministership, etc. Now, what is defection? If a member remains absent in the House when asked by the party leadership to remain present, or votes against the instructions of the party, or voluntarily leaves the membership of the party, it is deemed as defection. Experience of past 20 years shows that the Anti-Defection Amendment has not been able to curb defections, but it has given additional powers to the party leadership and the presiding officers of the legislature over the members. Okay, so with this, I hope today's lecture was productive for you guys. Until next time we meet again, God bless you all. Jai Hind.